This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
I have officially finished The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. No spoilers at all in this review. This is just going to be a quick kind of stream of conscience thoughts, unfiltered from me, filtered in the sense that there's no spoilers. However, okay, so I did things for parts 1 and part 2. So part 3 and maybe just kind of the book as a whole. Part 3, the pacing is fantastic. It really just goes for maybe like half I think it's the whole second half of the book. It's like 250 pages, just straight through, really hard to put down, entertaining, addicting, whatever. Like, you're really going to enjoy part 3. Parts 1 and 2, I think you will like if you like the Cosmere and you like the other books. But part 3, like, anyone's going to enjoy. It's just so fast paced and so action packed. It's awesome. By the end, a lot of the characters have had really cool arcs. There's one character that you may be a little surprised about that kind of has the main part of the arc. And honestly, maybe I wasn't expecting this, but by the time it was over, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed what Sanderson did with this character. There were some others that maybe didn't quite move as much, but they've moved before in previous books. And when I say moved, I mean like their character progression. So I was okay with that. I think the way that he handled all the characters was quite well done. The conflict itself, I've heard some criticisms. Some of my fellow Fantology members, in fact, have said they wanted maybe a more epic, bigger conflict. I felt like the conflict was just fine, the climax. It maybe wasn't quite Stormlight, Oathbringer level, like, huge explosion of everything happening at the same time. However, I thought it really matched the tone of Mistborn Era 2, where it wasn't necessarily a huge epic fantasy. There were smaller, more character-focused stories. And I mean, all that aside, the conflict was very big by the end of this book, but it wasn't quite as integrated as some of the Stormlight books, for example. So I could see that. Maybe one other criticism was some of the plot threads, some of like the minor plot thread narratives didn't come into play as much in the main weaving of the story. I could see that criticism. In fact, I probably feel the same way. It feels like Sanderson was really just including some things in order to set them up for Era 3, which is, years away. So that may be a little unsatisfying to read with no direct, big, important tie-in in this book. So that's fair. That said, there were a lot of smaller tie-ins, a lot of smaller Cosmere tie-ins, and I'll be interested to see what kind of the generic Sanderson fan thinks of this book, because there are a lot of small, like more than any other book, I think more than any other Cosmere book we've read so far, this one has the most connections to other small parts, other small plot threads throughout the Cosmere. A lot of kind of hints at things and weavings of things and world hoppers and things like that. Not so much where it's distracting from the main narrative. Like, I still feel like if you're ignorant of all of those other parts of the Cosmere, you can read this book and enjoy it. But there's going to be a lot of moments where you're like, what is this? And you just kind of have to accept it. And even me, who's read all of the Cosmere books at least twice, right? I'm still kind of reading some of these and thinking, okay, what is this? Because it's been years, and some of the stuff that happens here in The Lost Metal is really a pretty minor thing that we haven't seen very much in the Cosmere. Just some of that. Some of it's a little more of a staple, but some of it's a little more out there. So that was fun for me to be able to kind of look through Coppermind and learn a little bit more and get excited for some future things. I think there's going to be a lot of theorizing after this one, because Era 2 takes place in between Stormlight's Era 1 and 2. I guess Stormlight isn't necessarily use the Era moniker as much, but you know what I mean. So I think there's going to be some tie-ins there. Obviously, Harmony has appeared in some of the letters over there in the Stormlight books. So, trying to keep this as vague as possible here in my description. We'll do a longer, like, full spoiler review of some of our theories, etc., once the book is actually out. But for now, just know that if you really enjoy the Cosmere tie-ins, you're going to really enjoy reading through this and try to figure out what all these little details are. If you don't, or you're not as familiar, I think you'll still be fine, but I would be interested in hearing some perspectives there. So as a last word from this review, I really just recently finished the book, so maybe I need to think about it a little more before I do like an official rating, but I think I'm sitting between like an 8 and an 8.5 out of 10 for the book. I really liked a lot of it. I thought the pacing was the best part. I thought there were 2 character arcs that I really enjoyed and several others that were good, but like not quite as important. I thought there were a few plot things that were just kind of thrown in there and didn't quite play out the way that I would have liked them to. So maybe not the like complete culmination of everything that we've seen in previous, like seen in Mistborn Era 1, for example, where it all came together really majestically. However, I thought enough of it happened. And, Era 2 was never supposed to be this big thing. It all kind of like developed from a passion project. I guess all of Sanderson's books are passion projects, but just kind of developed from a side thing. And I think it always kind of had that feel of being more of a side thing. And, for better or worse, that's kind of what Sanderson has leaned into. And I think the Lost Metal really fits the billing of what you can expect for Era 2. So if you liked the previous Era 2 books, you will certainly like the Lost Metal. If you were a little shaky with the previous Era 2 books, honestly, I was, and I like the Lost Metal more than the other 3. And a lot of that is because of the tie-ins to the Cosmere, because it gets a little bit bigger. So there's my non-spoiler reaction for whatever that is after I just finished it a few minutes ago. Honestly, my personal preference, to just kind of give you a taste of where I'm coming with this review, is in reading Era 2, I always wished it was a little more like Age of Madness to Abercrombie's series, which is way more grimdark, but it's set in the same era, the Industrial Revolution type era. So it's super comparable in that way. And I just always felt like Era 2 was too goofy. And the Lost Metal kind of dials back those moments, but there's just so many things where it's like all serious and heartfelt, and I'm really kind of getting into it. And there's just some stupid joke. And, some of the humor, I said in previous reviews here that some of the humor in Era 2 is better, but man, I could have just done without all of that and had a more serious tone throughout it, maybe more like a biting sarcasm. And maybe I just prefer Abercrombie's type of take on this time period a little bit more than the way that Sanderson did it. Sanderson does a lot of things really great. Abercrombie does a lot of things really great. Maybe I shouldn't compare them directly since there's a lot of Reddit controversy over this anyway. But throughout all of Era 2, I was just not really super enjoying the take on the setting and the tone and everything. So take that for, what you will. That's my preference on Era 2. All of that said, I did like the Lost Metal. I liked it quite a bit, and I liked it better than the previous Era 2 books. So hopefully that gets you excited. See you later.